as we unpack this, let's first take a step back. What do you think is driving this gas price surge, and is it going to be transitory?
What's driving the surge is really a shortage of gas in Europe. So inventories are about 70% of where they were last year. And really what's happening at the moment is buyers are struggling to secure supplies ahead of the winter peak demand season. In terms of what's causing those shortages, really is this combination of supply and demand factors. When you look at the supply, we've seen a reduction in gas exports from Russia into Europe. And we've also seen no meaningful new LNG projects really coming online this year as a result of underinvestment in the industry. On the demand side, we've seen surging gas demand in Asia, particularly from China, where we're seeing a very strong recovery in gas demand as industrial production recovers strongly, in China. And we're also seeing surging LNG demand in Latin America, where a shortage of hydro electricity production has really caused LNG imports to surge. So LNG is really being sucked out of Europe, into the Pacific and into Latin America.
So Neil, there is a view out there that renewables aren't holding up. The green push has left people in the dark. And now we have countries across Europe and the United Kingdom who are too dependent on the weather for energy security and supply. Is Europe and the UK too dependent on these intermittent sources of energy?
Yeah, I think this is the fundamental issue here, that we've seen a reduction in gas storage, in the UK as investment increasingly shifts into renewables, which are, by their very nature, intermittent. It means that when we don't have these renewable supplies, there is an increased call on demand for fossil fuels, particularly natural gas. And if the supply just isn't there because there's not enough investment going into it, it will lead to these shortages in supply. So this is one of the big issues, I think, facing us as we move into the energy transition, that certainly we need a lot more renewables, within the energy mix to decarbonize, but we also need to keep investing in fossil fuels to ensure that there's enough supply of the fuel that we need for today.
This is highly political as well because, as you know, Gazprom is a very critical supplier to the European markets, but some have suggested that Russian exports are dropping on purpose. Do you think Russia and Gazprom has a hand to play in Europe's energy crisis today?
I think it absolutely does. And I think as you look at this winter, really two things are going to decide how high prices go. One is, the weather, and particularly if we have a cold winter over North Asia and Europe. And if you look at, the outlook, this is a La Nina cycle that we're in. So the expectations are that it could be a colder than normal winter. It also depends on whether or not Russia can increase gas supplies into Europe. Russian exports have held up actually pretty well overall this year, but those weaker exports into Europe have been offset by increased exports into Asia, particularly China. So as we come into the winter months, we need to see that increase. And of course, with Nord Stream 2 coming online, there is a possibility that we might see an increase in Russian exports as we come into the winter. So I think that could be critical in really determining how high prices go from here.